I'm Nicole. If you're feeling alone today in your job search, kind of like I am, or any part of your life, I'm really hopeful that what I'm going to talk about today is helpful. So I've been in talent acquisition for about 17 years, but I was never part of this TA community. I was kind of living in this bubble at Google where my only network and my identity was of Googlers. So I unfortunately learned that bubbles don't last forever because back in September, that Google bubble burst when I was unfortunately laid off while on mat leave with my 10-week-old baby. So today I'd like to talk to all of you just about the importance of community, finding your people within this TA space, and how it was kind of somewhat of the missing puzzle piece to my career and just overall sanity. So my first taste at community was at Starbucks back in 2000. So who would have thought that crafting lattes would have brought me here to this moment? Unfortunately, I don't know how to make latte art. It wasn't really a thing back in 2000. But my Starbucks for my entire career has revolved around it in my life as well from the coffee community. So I started at the age of 15. True story, I was actually sent home on my first day of work because the manager thought that I was at least 16 and I was far more mature than any other 15-year-old. But anyways, not only did this coffee community usher me into my TA career, but it also led me to the love of my life and my family. And I'd like to give a shout out to my friend Laura, who I saw on the call. I'm really glad that you're able to come. So after college and before I got into talent acquisition, I started my career at TJX as a product specialist, which I really loved. And then I got the rude awakening when I entered into their analyst program and realized it wasn't the job for me. I failed. It was the first time in my entire career and that I failed at a job. It was really humbling, but it was also really scary because I didn't know what was next. So next, I ended up going to the Brigham and Women's Hospital in a job I truly loved, but unfortunately, there was little growth for when I was 23 years old. So how did I get into Starbucks? And how did Starbucks come into play? So Laura, one of my Starbucks friends, was a recruiter for Hill Holiday, and she told me recruiting might be the job for me. So she basically recruited me to be a recruiter. So I applied on Craigslist, if anyone here knows what that is, to a recruiter coordinating role at a startup, and I never looked back. So my career in TA kind of took on a life of its own, from an RC to an HR generalist to an engineering recruiter, associate lead, and recruiting manager. And for the final part of my 12 and a half career at Google, I was managing managers along with individual contributor recruiters, sourcers. And but all in all, I really do thank a cup of coffee for my entrance into recruiting. Community for me also is within exercise. It's been one of the things that has kept me sane, especially these past few months. You can find me on the Peloton under Run Nichole Run, but don't look at my output. It's not very good. The Peloton community has been my sanctuary every morning, and when it's warmer, I'm usually out on the pavement running, and it's my morning pick me up. And where I also run into my community with which are my neighbors. I do love them, but I just like to say hello and keep going so I can rock out to my 90s jams, which I'm a huge fan of. So exercise is my joy, and I'm just a firm believer that you have to do one thing every day that brings you joy, which is something I drilled into my team as a people manager. If you can't prioritize yourself, how are you going to prioritize anything else? And you really need to put your own oxygen mask on first. And I know it sounds cliche, but I think it is a fact. And I love this quote, and I do have it hanging in my house. So if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. So the most important job that I have is being a mom and a partner. I have two girls with my partner, Annie, who I also met working at Starbucks. And even though the past couple months have been challenging to say the least, these are the people that matter to me on the hardest of days, and I've definitely had a few. My community at home is the one I show up for and who are rooting for me. It makes those days easier. So, as the head of the household, getting that notification that my role was eliminated truly made me feel like the rug was kind of ripped right underneath me. I had a lot of racing thoughts. How are we going to pay our bills? Is Annie going to have to go back to work? I really had to take a step back, take a breath, strategize. Like, what do I have to do for my family? I needed to reevaluate things like comp benefits, remote versus hybrid. And on September 13th at 12:56, the professional world that I knew just completely imploded. Again, I was on mat leave. I had a 10-week-old baby, and then I got the email that stated, "Notice regarding your employment. As you heard earlier today, Google LLC is reducing our recruiting team effectively today. And we're very sorry to tell you that your role at the location, if any, at which you work is being eliminated." So on this day, that bubble just kind of burst. My entire identity, world, community, you name it, was all in just one thing. And honestly, the only network that I had was Google. So moral of the story, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. My old manager, Jeff Moore, back in 2011, he currently is the head of TA at Toast, really encouraged me to network and get out there. I never listened. Just a fun fact, I'm a closeted introvert, so networking in the past really was the bane of my existence. It made my skin crawl. But internally at Google, there weren't enough hours in the day that of my one-on-ones and networking that I participated in. The running joke was at Google was the number of one-on-ones that Nichole Foley had. But the joke was truly on me for not having the same thing outside of Google. So I was really scared. I still am. I'd be lying if I told you I wasn't. So what did I do on September 13th? Well, I really panicked. I was kind of unhinged. I was like racing around my room, crying, saying to Annie, "What are we going to do?" But then I collected myself. I posted on LinkedIn and I just went for it. I don't even think I edited my post, which I'm sure Annie is cringing when she rereads it, but it went viral. I had 1.4 million impressions, over 9,000 likes, hundreds of comments and reposts, and I had no idea that you could go viral on LinkedIn. I used LinkedIn a lot when I was in IC, and I posted jobs that I had to fill, but I was never an active participant. So this attention took me by surprise. I actually got texts from friends as well that said, "Hey, my family saw this article in India." So it was really cool that I was famous in India. I still kind of laugh about it because it's super random, but I was also thinking like, wow, my experience like truly resonated with people. And so many people have reached out or commented and said, "Hey, me too. I was laid off on leave. Let me support you. Do you want to talk? I'm so sorry. What can I do to help?" But the best connection that I received was with Steve Levy. So my old manager, Jeff, who I mentioned before, commented on my post, and then Steve did, and then Steve FaceTimes me out of the blue. When I saw the call, I was like, I don't know this person. Why are they FaceTiming me? Also, how did he get my phone number? But we're all FBI agents as recruiters and sourcers, so easily he could have found it. So hesitantly, I picked up, and the rest is history. Steve, on that first call, gave me a lot of feedback on my LinkedIn, gave me names of people I needed to connect with, and just offered his support. And he introduced me to the Hire Easy family, in addition to so many others. And this was just a taste of the community piece that I've just learned over the past 6 months that's completely invaluable. So what is the definition? So with dictionary.com, it states that community is a feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals. I've had many examples of community within my life, as you could see from Starbucks, Peloton, and Google. But the TA community has just felt really, really different to me. They've just showed up with no questions asked, and I was really vulnerable. And I truly got the biggest group hug that I've ever received. So, Steve, Shannon, Daniel, Angie, Brian, Paul, Jerry, Jason, you might not know who I'm talking about, but I truly hope someday you do. These people who I barely know have just stepped in to say hello, helped me, and just given me opportunities that I never thought that I would have gotten. And not once have I felt like I was a burden to ask for help or ask questions. And I've never met any of these people in person, but they've truly given me so much love and support. And I think that's the true definition of community right there. I've just never been one to suffer in silence. I like to talk about things a lot. And I'm just really lucky that the community of people stepped in when I really needed them the most. But alone we can do so little, and together we can do so much. And because of it, I've just never felt alone. Some days, sure, but I really feel involved and I feel like I'm a part of something just thanks to this community. So there is a power in discomfort. I stole this quote from Kendall Tools' Pop Punk Peloton Ride, if, in case anyone's interested. But I've been given a lot of opportunities that have taken me out of my comfort zone. Steve, Angie, and I did a webinar. So thank you to Kunwar for organizing on Halloween that talks about candidate horror stories. And this was literally offered to me 6 weeks after I was laid off. Steve barely knew me. For all he knew, I was a loose cannon and could have just been terrible. But I was also introduced to Angie, who reached out and helped me prep for an interview, which I'll talk more about later. But again, I didn't know these people. And then I've become a panelist on recruiter therapy. I'm still kind of finding my footing there because everyone knows each other, but I'm like really pushing myself to speak up more. But again, an opportunity to speak and just get my name to help others. And I also made a little video for the Of Course challenge. It was an attempt of what I'd like to call a pseudo TikTok. I don't do TikTok, but I cringed the entire time. My partner Annie was just like kind of laughed at me through it, but I couldn't have done it without her because she did a lot of the recordings, ideas, and costumes. But that community piece right there and the production of that video was definitely a love-hate experience. But any time in my career that I've been kind of brought out of my comfort zone, I've really learned the most and I felt the most fulfilled. And over the past few months, even though I've had zero job, I felt more fulfilled than I've had in a long time, just thanks to the community and the opportunities. So my ask for this community today is like, think of something outside your comfort zone, do it, post about it, tag me. I really want to hear about it. But people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I'll never forget over these past few months the community stepping in. I've experienced a lot, but the support I've felt is just unforgettable. But this also goes for with some bad experiences with the job search. So with bad experiences, what I've learned is that not everyone is going to work like me. So again, shout out to Angie, who I mentioned earlier, Angie Veros. She helped me prep for a panel interview. I ended up being rejected for it, but she gave me a lot of pointers and just rooted me on from the sidelines. And then also, I'd like to give a shout out to my former manager, Jack Mashat. He knows me better than anyone. And it was just as a very good example of my Google community continuing to step up for me. But we had a conversation. But when you have bad experiences, you want to share them. I've had a lot of WTF, is it me moments during this job search. But I interviewed for a TA manager at Dana-Farber. A friend referred me. I had a phone interview. It took the hiring manager 2 weeks to get back to me after I sent a thanks. Just wasn't really great recruiting. I was scheduled for an interview, a panel interview with 7 people for a month out without even asking me my availability. So it was basically like, show up or don't. Interviewers were great. I sent an email to the hiring manager, passed my thanks along. It took her 2 weeks to send me a canned email from a no reply. And I cried about it. I really wanted the job. But what I did, I emailed Steve. He gave me a pep talk. He wrote about it himself, and then we talked about it in recruiter therapy. So right there, like have a hard day, have a bad experience, but the community is here to kind of push you along, push you to your next go at it. And granted, we all hope that it's a good one, but if it's not, they're just here to make you realize like, hey, I was really great at my job. Any company is going to be really lucky to have me, right? So anyone on the call that's job searching, like, yes, any company would be really lucky to have you. But we can't do everything on our own, and sometimes we need help. And honestly, at times it's the only way to survive. So why do I say this? So from the slide before, I could have sat at my desk, cried to Annie, which I've definitely done a lot of. Sorry to Annie. But because of the support that I've had, it's been easier to kind of overcome these obstacles. So on this day, I really needed help. We just can't survive the market on our own. If you want to sit behind your computers, apply for a job blindly without talking to someone, you're just not going to get anywhere. So gone are the days where we just apply for a job, hear back, interview, get a job within a week. It's not 2007 anymore, it's 2024. So we need each other. We need this community to share our horror stories. But the amount of hard things that I've had to do over the past 8 months has been overwhelming, but I know I could do it because I could do hard things. And I think we together as a community can. And I just want to share a quick example of how I had to do something really hard a few weeks ago. So sadly, my brother Eric died 1 week before my child was born, 3 weeks into my mat leave. And it was time to pick up his belongings from his house, and to say that the experience was traumatizing is an understatement. I don't really talk a lot about my brother with strangers, maybe in writing, because I just don't want to be known as that girl. That brother died just as much as I don't want to be known as the girl who was laid off on mat leave. I just really want to be known as someone who supports others with shared experiences. And I also don't want to cry and with people that I don't know on our first connection. And just on this hard day in typical me fashion, I thought it would be great to schedule something for my job search. So I scheduled time with Jason Seiden. If you don't know him, reach out. And during the call, Jason opened up about some of his experiences. Then I found myself sharing. So Jason presumed that I didn't really talk about my brother. And I just finally found someone that got it. It's just really hard for me to explain. But in that 30-minute call that I wished was an hour was what I needed. It was like my brother was saying, "You need this." He was yelling at me, "Why are you crying?" Which is something he often said. So on the days you're feeling so badly, specifically about the job search or candidate experience, just like take a call, post about it on LinkedIn. If there's an experience you want to share, or you're passionate about, post about it. If there's someone in your field you admire or look up to, reach out. If they don't respond, find someone else. And if someone wants to talk to you that may need your help, give them 15 minutes. You might need them more than they need you. As a community and TA, we just need to be better than average. So just pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone is just like from with the support of the community will truly make us great. So you can apply the statement, it takes a village to so many aspects in life. And I know that times are tough, but I'm hopeful that after you heard about some of my experiences, you feel less alone, and understand that there's a community of people here that want to help you. And just finding that it might be the missing puzzle piece in your everyday. So don't let a layoff define you. It's not your identity, but how you show up is. And on the days that you don't want to do the hard things, reach out. Find me on LinkedIn. Don't forget the H though. I have an H in my name. But connect with me and I know you'll feel better. But just open up your network and don't let it be your current employer. But thank you all for listening. I know I kind of zoomed past this, but up next on the mic is my new friend Mike, who is going to share about some of his sourcing moves that I'm actually excited to hear about.